All right, guys, so now we're going to implement the logout user action, which is going to be pretty simple and straightforward. This should be the last action in our auth actions file. Okay, we're almost getting to the profile stuff. So let's say log user out, and we're going to export a const called logout user. And it's not going to take in any parameters, and we also want to use dispatch here. Okay, so we want to go like that, and we want to first remove the token from local storage, and we can do that easily with local storage dot remove item, and we want to remove the item that is called JWT token. All right, so that's the first thing we want to do. Next, we want to remove the auth header for future requests. Okay, now remember that set auth token that we created in the utils folder. It makes it so that once we log in, if we have the token in local storage, then it's going to attach the token to the authorization header for every request. So what we want to do is we want to call set auth token, except we want to pass in false. Okay, because remember, if we take a look at it, it checks for token, and in this case it's going to be false, which is going to delete it. Okay, so it's not going to be attached to any future requests after we log out. And then the last thing we want to do is set the current user to an empty object, which will also set is authenticated to false. So we're going to say dispatch, and we want to call set current user. Okay, we did this above, except we passed in the decoded token. Now we're passing an empty object. All right, and if we go to our reducer, okay, it's calling this right here, except decoded, that we're just passing an empty object. So if we go to our auth reducer and we look at set current user, the payload is going to be an empty object. So this, in fact, is going to be false. It's going to set is authenticated to false. Okay, and then user is going to get sent to the payload, which is in fact an empty object. So it's going to get set back to its initial state, logging us out. So now that we have that, let's go to our navbar. So we want to go to components, layout, navbar.js. And this is now going to be connected to Redux because we need to access the auth state. So we're going to import, let's import prop types. So that's going to be from prop-types. Let's import connect from React Redux. And let's see, we're going to need the logout user action that we created, so let's import that. That's going to be from the actions / auth actions. And then let's go down, let's see. Right now we just have developers, sign up, and login. Now we're going to have a different set of links depending on if we're logged in or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the auth state with map state to props. Okay, so let's go down here and let's say const map state to props. And let's bring in auth from state dot auth. Okay, let's also just quickly add our prop types here. So we'll say navbar dot prop types, and we have our logout user. Which is a function. And then we have our auth, which is an object. Okay, and then down here, let's export connect. Oops, what happened? So we'll export connect, we'll pass in our map state to props, and let's pass in some curly braces and our logout user function. All right. Now, these links here, this is what's going to change, okay? The developers, that's going to be available whether we're logged in or not. So what I'm going to do is go and let's go above the return, but still in the render. And we want to get from the auth state, and now from the auth property, because we map the state to props, we want to pull out is authenticated and the user object from this props.auth. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll create two variables. One will be auth links and one will be guest links. Okay, and depending on if the user's logged in, they'll see either the guest links or the auth links. So let's say const auth links, and we'll go ahead and set it to a set of parentheses, and then we can put our JSX in here, or basically our HTML. So I'm going to grab this UL, okay, right here, and I'm actually going to cut that out and paste that in here. I'll save it just to format it. And then let's copy this whole thing and let's create another one and call this one guest links. All right, now guest links, this I don't believe we have to change anything because all we want is the register and login if it's a guest. Now auth links, we're going to want a few links. We're going to want the feed, the post feed, the dashboard, and the logout. Now we haven't created the dashboard or the feed yet, so I'm just going to have the logout for now. If we're logged in, that's all we should see. So let's say we'll change this. I'm sorry. You know what? It's not going to be a link. It's going to be actually going to be a click event. It's not going to be part of the router. So we're not using that link. We're going to use an A tag because it's not actually going to go anywhere. Let's say nav link. It's not actually going to go anywhere. It's just going to call a click handler. So we'll say on click equals, and let's say this dot, we'll call this on logout click, and then I'm just going to bind this. Okay, we don't have a constructor, so I'm not going to do it up there. I'm just going to do the bind this here. All right, so that will call the on logout click function, which we now have to create. So let's see, let's go up here and let's go above the render. We'll say on logout click. We'll pass in our event, and let's say e.prevent default. And then we want to call the logout user, so we'll say this.props.logout user. Like that. So let's save, and let's see, is authenticated as assigned but never used. Okay, so one thing I forgot to do is actually display the links. So we have auth links and guest links. So we want to go back down to where we had the UL, which is, where was it? It was right under this UL, I believe. And we're just going to put an expression here. We're going to use, it's basically a conditional. We're going to use a ternary operator. We're going to say if is authenticated, then we want to display the auth links, else we want to display the guest links. Okay? And that will display either one of these two ULs, whether we're and it's going to depend on is authenticated, which is coming from our auth property, which comes from our auth state from Redux. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So let's save that. Let's make sure we get no errors here. User is assigned but never used. Anchors must have content. The content must be accessible. Wait a second. Okay, so I guess it doesn't like the hash. User is assigned but never used. Let's see. So we are going to use this, but oh, you know what? I know why I wanted to use this, because I want to display the avatar next to the logout. That's right. So under the logout A tag here. Oh, that's why it's complaining. We have this as a, yeah, this is not right. This should have a closing A tag. And inside here is where I want to put the avatar, okay, which is stored in the user object or the auth object. So in here, let's put an image tag, and let's give the source user.avatar. All right. Let's see. We also want to, I guess for the alt, we could put the user's name. So user.name. And then I just want to put a title, because I want to kind of let the user know that they have to have a gravatar connected to their email to have a profile avatar. So we'll say you must have a gravatar connected to your email to display an image. Okay, and it'll still show the sample image or the dummy image, but just to let them know if they hover over it, they'll see this message. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of inline style as well. So in React, we can say style, and we want double curly braces here. And we'll say width 25 pixels. And let's do margin right, make it camel case, not like regular CSS. And then let's do 5 pixels. All right, so I'm going to save that. And actually after the image, let's just put logout like that. Prettier adds this, I guess, for a space, but don't worry about that. So now I'm going to go back to my application. Okay, so we have our log out here because we're actually still logged in. Okay, I actually want to make that rounded, that avatar. So we're going to add a class name to the image. Let's say class name equals rounded circle. It's just a bootstrap class. Good. Now if I click logout, there we go. So you can see it called set current user, and remember it passed in that empty object, which then turned is authenticated to false and got rid of all the user data. Okay, this is the diff. If we look at the state, there we go, we're back to the default state. So that's awesome. So let's try to log in again. And there we go. As soon as we log in, the navbar changes to a logout. That's exactly what we want. Cool. And it set the current user, and the user is now in the auth state. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to make it so that when the token expires, right now we have our token set on the back end, we set it to expire in an hour. I want it to log the user out, okay, and redirect to the login page. So what we'll do is I'll log out here. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, let's go back to app. Let's go to app.js. That's where we want to do this. And remember right here where we checked for the token, if it was set, we set auth token. We called set current user with the decoded token, which is the user. But what I want to do is after this, I want to check for expired token. Okay, so we're going to do const current time, and we're going to set that to date.now, and then we're just going to divide that by 1000. All right, and then we're going to say if, because remember this is in milliseconds, so we want to say if decoded.exp, because remember in the object it has that exp value. We want to say if that is less than the current time, then we want to log out the user, and we can do that from here by just saying store.dispatch, and we want to call logout user, like that. All right, we're also going to want to clear the current profile, but we haven't done that yet, so we can just let's make this a to-do. We haven't even created the profile state yet. So we want that, and then we also want to redirect to login. So here we're just going to use the standard window.location.href and set that to /login. All right. Oh, there we go. So now if the token is expired, it should log the user out. And it should redirect to the login page. Now, one last thing I want to do here is if we're logged in, let's say John, if we're logged in, I don't want to be able to, I mean the links, the sign in and register links are gone, but if I go to /login, I don't want this to be able to happen or register. So that's really easy to fix. We can just go into the login component, and we're going to go to the top here. Let's go above the component will receive props, and let's add another lifecycle method called component did mount. And then all we want to do here is check to see if we're logged in, and we can do that by saying this.props.auth.is-authenticated. If that's true, then let's just redirect by saying this.props.history.push, and we want to go to our dashboard, which we haven't created yet, but at least it'll send us to that URL. Okay, and then I'm going to copy this and save, and then let's go back. Let's go to register.js and let's do the same thing. So we'll go ahead and paste that in and save. All right, and let's go back, and you can see it already did it. So if I go to register, brings us to the dashboard. If I go to login, dashboard, and then for the landing, let's also do it for the landing. There's no reason to come here if we're logged in. So we'll do the same thing. We'll go to our landing component, and we'll add that. Well, actually, that means we have to bring in Redux. Yeah, we'll just bring Redux in. There might be some other things that we want to do here. So let's import prop types. And the reason I always import prop types is because we're mapping our state to props, meaning we're going to have a property. And whenever you have properties in your components, you should add them to your prop types. Okay, we also want to import connect. Okay, and then we'll just go down here and say connect. So in here we'll say map state to props. And we don't have any actions. We just need to get the auth state. So here we'll say const map state to props. State. So you'll really get the hang of this after a while. Auth, we want state.auth. Let's add our prop types. So what's this called? Landing. And we just have our auth, which is an object. Oops, object. All right. Now what we want to do is just paste in that component did mount. Actually, I have to copy it again. So I'm going to go to login and just grab this. Because now, since we brought in our auth state into the auth property, we now have access to this here is authenticated. We want to check that, and if it's true, then we're going to redirect. All right, so we'll save, and now if we go back, you can see it already redirected us. If I click here, it's going to bring us to our dashboard. Great. All right, so our login and logout is complete. Our registration is complete. Now what we want to do is start to work with profile state. Okay, we're going to create a dashboard route, and we need to access our profile for the dashboard because it's going to include things like our experiences, our education, some other things. So we're going to get into that next, okay, in the next section.